We're not here to recruit anybody. We just want to connect with the gaming community and be good representatives of the Navy. But we do realize, right? Naturally, when people watch it and they hear all these things, our lives, they might be interested in joining the Navy. And we're happy to point them in the right direction, right? You can go to Navy.com. We've got a link to it on our site, and you can find out everything you need to know about joining the Navy.
That is the Navy esports team on Twitch. If you're like me, you might be wondering a few things. The military has esports teams? Are they lying? Because it sure sounds like they're lying. Aren't there kids like 13 years old on Twitch? To which the answers are 3 branches currently have teams: the Air Force, Army, and Navy. Let's read from this handy Twitch guide for streamers made by the Navy Recruiting Command.
Everything done on social media should be aimed at making connections between prospects and recruiters.
Yes, you only have to be 13 to use Twitch. And let's be honest, some are probably younger. So in this video, I want to explore what other recruitment tactics the military are using, especially aimed at kids.
Now, this amendment is specifically to block recruitment practices and funding for recruitment practices on platforms such as twitch.tv.
The US military recently got some attention on Twitch because they were caught holding fake giveaways to get people to sign up for the military. That's right, Xbox controllers for joining the Army without the Xbox controllers. I already knew the military spends obscene amounts of money in the entertainment industry, and that the military relies upon promising socioeconomic advantages to families struggling, like providing healthcare and access to education. Things people wouldn't need help with in a more fair society. But until recently, I wasn't aware there are programs like the Young Marines, designed to get kids as young as only 8-year-olds interested. Of course, they also claim not to be recruiting, much like the Navy esports team tried to here.
You can go to Navy.com. We've got a link to it on our site.
But we'll come back to the Young Marines shortly. The extent recruitment efforts take to filter youth into the military makes sense when you consider they know the younger people get involved, the more likely they are to stay for full careers. This is why we have programs like the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps in high schools, which sometimes students have found themselves placed into automatically with difficulties getting out of afterwards. Meaning a kid in high school could be there compulsorily, which is odd because that would go against the Convention on the Rights of the Child, a human rights treaty that defines a number of rights for children, something that every country in the United Nations has ratified, except for one country, the United States. Before being elected, Obama said it was embarrassing we hadn't done so. After being elected, George W. Bush, before him, gave us the No Child Left Behind Act in 2002, which in fact left a lot of children behind, like in Houston, Texas. In Sharpston High School, 463 students out of 1,700 left in 1 year. Not one of them was reported as a dropout, though. But Bush didn't want to leave kids behind when it came to joining the military, because inside a piece of legislation about providing education to students was also a requirement that gave military recruiters the same access as college campuses, including students' contact information. As recruiting efforts have struggled in the past couple years, new efforts are being made. Virtual recruiting teams have been formed to try to mine prospects from social media. Deals with city governments are made to install a program called March to Success on public computers, supposedly to help students study for college entrance exams. It also just happens to collect students' personal information to determine potential leads for military recruiters. There is also a new initiative called Focus 22, specifically targeting poor urban neighborhoods where families are especially struggling to find jobs. And of course, let's not forget the esports teams on Twitch.
Why does it say copyright Navy Recruiting Command at the bottom of your esports website page?
Before making this video, I hadn't really thought about the fact that kids can join the military at 17. They can't even vote yet. Now, they do need a guardian's consent to sign up, but I'm not sure how reassuring that is when kids even younger are sent to programs like the Young Marines.
No, keep it straight up now. Straight up now. Go back on. Double time. March.
The Young Marines is a recruitment program whether you want it to be or no.
The Young Marines is a program for all kids ages 8 through the end of high school. Because, after high school, they can join the real thing. I found out about this program watching The Recruits, which is a documentary available on Means TV. I highly recommend watching it in its entirety. The Young Marines claims to improve the lives of America's youth by teaching the values of the Marine Corps. Now, I can understand the appeal of saying things like honor, courage, and commitment, or even discipline, and how that could be good for a kid to learn. What I don't understand is why little kids must act out like they're in the Marines to learn these values.
Shooting a rifle or a pistol or anything and holding it steady and controlling your breath and then squeezing that trigger is an awesome way to learn discipline.
I don't have an issue with guns, but it seems dangerous to conflate learning to shoot with being a better person. Like, that might lead to some disastrous outcomes. But besides the catchy soundbite values, what brings in the most kids to the Young Marines is probably because it's cheap.
I want to be an engineer.
And what size is you?
For NASA. All those space camps and stuff cost a lot of money. My mom can't afford all those other places, so we do Young Marines because it's a lot cheaper.
If kids stay in the program, they'll obviously get used to it, and that lifestyle will become normalized. The kids also know they'll have a clear advantage over others if they join the military for real. Not only because they'll have years of practice over other new recruits, but each unit of the Young Marines are run by former military as well, who can help connect the kids with recruiters.
Nothing wrong with you. You don't run up to me and stop and say, my heart hurts.
This worries me because around 17, when someone can enlist, is a scary time as a youth. Trying to figure out who you are and what path to take. You're about to enter the real world everyone has warned you about most of your life after being in a school environment where you're taught by following instructions. Combine that with financial struggles, this just primes you to see the military as a great option. It's an option that simplifies your decision amidst a world where it may be difficult to find a job. Listen to this former Young Marine.
The Young Marines unequivocally encouraged joining later. I won't say that they had to push me, because you're being so thoroughly fed all this pageantry and all of this discipline and all this talk about structure and honor and integrity and courage, these Marine Corps values, they make you want it.
I'm not sure there could be a better example of a child getting funneled into one of these programs due to unfortunate circumstances than Tommy. Tommy is a 10-year-old kid. His mom has non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, stage 4. A family has basically taken them in to help care for Tommy and his mom. From that family is John, who used to be in the military. One day at a parade, Tommy sees the Young Marines marching and asks about them, so John is eager to sign him up. Even though Tommy regularly shows he doesn't want to be in the Young Marines, he is pushed and shamed into continuing on. In fact, the clip earlier about gun shooting somehow equals discipline, that was right after Tommy cried because he didn't want to shoot. Again, I'm not against guns, but I am against forcing someone to learn how to shoot who is clearly upset at the idea of doing so. Especially a 10-year-old. I have a child almost Tommy's age, and this just made me sick to my stomach. Tommy's family is struggling. He clearly wants to leave the Young Marines, but John always shoots it down. And what is Tommy supposed to do? Insist to someone who is kind enough to take him and his mom in? That's so much pressure for a little kid. Tommy's mother probably doesn't even know how upsetting it is for him.
Instead of wanting to shoot, he said he didn't want to shoot. When I asked him why, he started crying. Look at me. The little crying thing doesn't affect me. You understand me?
Yes, sir.
How old are you?
10, sir.
Okay, then you act like a 10-year-old. No more crying. Buck up and just say, okay, I'm gonna do it.
So if your family is struggling like Tommy's with money, and you think going to college would be a big deal for you, you're going to want to believe a recruiter. A recruiter who conveniently may be walking around your school, ready to promise you lots of things. Like an enlistment bonus of up to $40,000. That's a pretty big deal for most families. And of course, access to health insurance and a higher education. It turns out things everyone should just have access to anyway are great bargaining chips. What's surprising is even with these benefits, joining the military might not be better socioeconomically than a civilian lifestyle. Of course, they're not going to mention that. While there may be an initial earnings advantage, many do worse later on. And of course, enlisting comes with other risks. I'm not going to get into all of them here because some are obvious for people who have experienced things like combat, but I will include some sources in the description. What might be less obvious is there are risks to mental health without even being deployed. Heavy drinking, anxiety, depression, and self-harm, for example, are higher even among those not sent to war. And stress from basic training can be even greater than war when you look at the rate of attempted suicides. Some of the highest stress is said to be felt after the first week of training. And once you're in the military, you can't just change your mind without potentially serious consequences. And why would a 17-year-old ever change their mind on a life-changing decision? It can be extremely hard to be discharged, and if you are, you may receive a permanent mark on your record that will hurt your chances of getting a job for the rest of your life. This is worse when you consider recruiters will often aggressively encourage people to sign up even if they have a good reason not to, even suggesting you lie about disqualifying conditions. After all, that'll be your problem. The recruiter has a quota to fill. Researching for this video, I checked the official Marine Corps recruiting YouTube channel to look into the Delayed Entry Program, also known as the DEP, or in the Army, which apparently has a better marketing team, Future Soldiers Program. It's basically promising to enlist in the future without fully being committed. You are encouraged to participate in activities and prepare to meet standards for active duty at a local recruiting center. This is the easiest time to change your mind and get out of the military, although recruiters will likely be very persuasive as they have spent time and energy on you. In fact, you can just not show up to your ship date for basic training. You don't need to give any notice. Although I do want to note that there is a clause that has not been used in decades, but the contract signed to join the DEP could be used to order you to active duty against your will. Now, this video I've been playing in the background is only a little over a minute long, and it's titled, "What is the Delayed Entry Program?" And it literally never answers that question or gives any information at all.
The first thing we're going to wipe out of your vocabulary is I can't, because there's no such thing. I can is the only thing that should be running through your head. Are you going to be that individual that always wonders what if or why? Or are you going to be the individual that always pushes past your limits and helps those individuals to your left and right and makes them your brother and sister and build that trust and that confidence in one another?
It's just an advertisement set to motivational music while telling you not to dare having any doubts. I'm surprised they don't have a clip in there saying it's not recruiting.
You can go to Navy.com. We've got a link to it on our site.
Again, it's extraordinarily important that we approach and study emerging technologies, including live streaming, which is a platform that is exploding in youth, particularly among young people. And when it comes to issues of technology, I believe that we should act with reservation and caution first, rather than entering with both feet in and then trying to undo damage that could potentially be done.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tried to stop the military advertising on Twitch, but the amendment proposed was rejected in a vote with 292 against and only 126 in favor. And while the majority against obviously were Republican, 103 of those were Democrats. Even if the amendment had been successful, I believe we would need to do more. The military is going to continue to get more creative in recruiting people, which means especially our kids. We also have to tackle the very root of what makes this so enticing in the first place, fighting for better living conditions for everyone, things like healthcare, livable wages, and education, but also pushing back against the culture of fear about kids not behaving.
Better a professional little polite 10-year-old boy than the pain in the butt kid that talks back, that doesn't listen. I prefer him to be the little robot, I guess, if I had to choose.